Hello, everyone. The Authors Guild Foundation welcomes you to today's event in our series From Manuscript to Marketplace, talking about the Book of Wounded Sparrows by Octavio Quintanilla. Also joining us is J. Bruce Fuller, poet himself and the director of Texas Review Press, which published the book. Now, the Authors Guild Foundation provides educational programming for free to the public, thanks to support from the National Endowment for the Arts and our donors. We believe in supporting an abundant and diverse body of literature, and that achieving that requires that authors understand the publishing world and what it takes to manage a career as a writer. You can learn more about Authors Guild membership at authorsguild.org, and also our free email newsletter gets you invitations to all our events like this. A lot of the events we do cover things like finding an agent, getting published, or practical tips for fun stuff like filing taxes as a freelancer. But this series, From Manuscript to Marketplace, sort of a case study of the publishing process. We have an author of a recent book in conversation with some of their publishing team, talking about what went on behind the scenes, making the book and releasing it. Often it's a novelist or memoirist in conversation with their agent and maybe an editor or publicist from Penguin Random House or wherever. But poetry works a little bit differently, of course. No literary agent, usually a small press or a university press. And we're really excited to cover poetry publishing specifically today. And the book, I got it here, Book of Wounded Sparrows, longlisted for the National Book Award. It's a beautiful book. Congrats on that, Octavio. Octavio is the author of If I Go Missing and the Book of Wounded Sparrows, as well as the forthcoming Las Horas Imposibles, The Impossible Hours, which won the 2024 Ambroggio Prize from the Academy of American Poets. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit at the very end. Octavio is the founder and director of the Literature and Arts Festival VersoFrontera, publisher of Alabrava Press, and former poet laureate of San Antonio. His Frontextos visual poems have been published and exhibited widely. He teaches literature and creative writing at Our Lady of the Lake University. And J. Bruce Fuller is the author of How to Drown a Boy from LSU Press earlier this year. The chapbooks The Dissenters' Ground, Lancelot, and Flood, and many poems that have appeared widely. He's received scholarships from Breadloaf, the Sewanee Writers Conference, and Stanford, where he was a 2016-18 Wallace Stegner Fellow. He teaches at Sam Houston State University, where he's director of TRP, Texas Review Press. Now, before we go further, do you guys want to say anything else about yourselves? What kind of classes do you teach, and like how did you get into your roles as like editors and publishers? Just so the audience kind of gets to know you a little better.
So I teach at a small private Catholic university in San Antonio, Our Lady of the Lake University. I teach undergrad creative writing, literature, and also graduate creative writing workshops. One of the classes that I teach and that I really enjoy teaching is literary translation. Other than that, that's basically my setup. You know, I undergrad I teach about it's a teaching university, so I teach about in the fall I teach 3 classes, in the spring I teach 4, so it's a heavy load of teaching, and I really have to fight for the time that I get to write and to create. But other than that, I really enjoy uh, teaching the subject matter that I'm always thinking about, you know. So it kind of goes hand in hand. I don't have to turn off one switch to move into another. They kind of just blend. So yeah, I teach quite a bit.
On the opposite side of that, I don't teach much anymore at all. I came up the same way as most writers, MFA, PhD, and taught for a long time. But as I was a student, learning how to edit and working for small presses and journals and doing the publishing, editing side of things, that kind of grew over time to where when I became director of a university press, the teaching load got smaller and smaller all the way down. So running a publishing house of this size is a full-time year-round kind of job. So the teaching is kind of gone down. But I always try to encourage my students and people I talk to think about those other side side skills that we get when we're coming up, learning to be poets or fiction writers, the editing, the marketing, the design, the um, running a reading series, the arts type things, because you're going to probably have to do some of those along the way as well. So, and Octavio is a publisher as well, and we all do a little bit of everything at this level, I think.
Yeah, one of the things that I do is organize a literary festival, Johnny, as you mentioned, VersoFrontera. We just uh, in October we just finished our fourth year, uh, so we're going to start planning for 2025. And um, those of you who have organized literary festivals, you know the type of time and effort and work it's required. So that's in addition to teaching. And I also run a small press. It's a micro press, basically. We publish about one or two chapbooks per year of poetry, but still, it requires a lot of time. But also, it's my way to learn how to enter into this world of publishing. And I think doing that is in many ways teaching me how to promote my own work. Since you're always thinking about how to promote other people's work, you also learn about how to take risks with your own work, and just be more ambitious in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a wild jump from the writing workshop experience to what a life doing this looks like. Well, let's talk about the Book of Wounded Sparrows. It's a collection with a pretty consistent through line, the present day poet in conversation with his childhood self. There's some great
Right.
interviews and things if you Google Octavio, where he talks about it more in depth. But so Octavio, you were my professor 17 years ago. Um,
Right.
you were a PhD student. I took a poetry workshop that you taught. One thing I remember is that you had to prepare for a translation test, and you were kind of nervous about it. I think it was
Yeah.
like part of you. I think you said part of you felt like it was cheating to translate Spanish, but
Right.
also like you're doubting like whether you're a good enough translator.
Right.
Um, and I think it's been quite a journey to get where you are now, I'm sure. So yeah, you said in one of those interviews that this book was 40 years in the making. So please go ahead and tell us about
Yeah. So this book if you read If I Go Missing, my first book that came out in 2014, I think everything I wanted to say in that book is being said in this one. I just didn't know how to write about my experience back then, and that experience it has to do with uh, moving from one country to another as a child. I was born in Texas. My parents went back to Mexico when I was a baby. And then when I turned 9, my brother and I, who was 8 at the time, we came to live with my grandmother in Texas so we could go to school. My father in Mexico was a farmer. There were 6 of us. I have 5 siblings. Going to school was not going to happen for me. In Mexico, you have to, once you finish elementary, you have to pay. And I was an American citizen, and my brother also was an American citizen. So we kind of had a golden ticket. You know, we knew we were going to come to the United States eventually, but we just didn't know that it was going to be at that time. And obviously, uh, once you cross a river, once you cross a border, everything you are stays behind. Your language, your friends, your family, the geography, you love everything. Um, so the book has to do with that migration, and that in many ways at that time painful transformation, um, of suppressing a lot of things, a lot of elements of who you are, and one of them was Spanish. The first thing that I was told when I got to school was, the teacher, I remember her saying, she told me in Spanish, she said, this is probably the only time I'm going to speak to you in Spanish. So you need to start learning English as fast as you can. So think about that. You're 9 years old and you're forced to really to hustle, right? To learn a new language. And so my Spanish slowly started, just fading. I mean, I could speak home Spanish. I could speak, slang, etc. I could communicate, but uh, I didn't. I was not educated in Spanish. I did not have the academic Spanish that was required at the time of my taking that test for me to succeed. So that's why I was kind of doubtful. I was like, does the Spanish that I know is going to be enough to translate the text? Which, if I remember correctly, I there were two exercises, and both of them. I think one was on philosophy and one was on literary criticism in Spanish, and I had to. I'm sorry, in English, and I had to translate it into Spanish. Um, so the other option was for me to take a um, a class in Spanish, which I found kind of ironic. I'm like, no, I'm going to try it. And uh, the good thing is that I succeeded. I think my own reading, my teaching myself the academic Spanish that I thought I was going to need in those 2 years that I was getting ready for that for the exit exams helped me a lot. So I actually read literature in Spanish so I could start getting uh, the terms and concepts that I can, hopefully use when that time came. But nonetheless, I was still I was a little scared about it. Here I am, somebody who says and others say speak Spanish, and yet I am doubtful about what I know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, a lot of this is reflected in the poetry, and it's great. Jay, did you first see this uh, as a manuscript, or you encountered individual poems before that? How did it go on your end?
Yeah, so I was already a fan of Octavio's work. Before we finally met some years ago, and of course, as editor, I said, what are you working on? He said, I've been working on a book for 10 years
Yeah.
or so, which is typical for poetry books, I think. And I sight unseen, I was like, I'm interested. Let me know. Let me see what you got. Let me, when the book actually came in, it's kind of like a editor's dream in a way. The book knew what it was. The book knew what it wanted to be. The through lines and the themes and everything that Octavio was talking about were there. So as an editor, it's kind of a dream book to get. We ended up, uh, going back and forth a few months over the structure. Were we going to use art in it? Were we going to use the Frontextos? How are we going to use them? Where were they going to go? How many were we going to use? So it was really a structural book. Me trying to help him find the structure that the book needed for itself. But as far as an editorial project, it was a dream. It came in clean and ready to go. So um, we kind of took the book as a project, a publishing project from the beginning. So that was a really nice way to work on a project for me.
Mhm. So TRP has a few prizes in series. So I guess you had the option to use the art or not. Could have published the book. So it was a matter of whether you both wanted the art in
Yeah,
conversation with poetry.
a lot of our books have art in it, and because Octavio is such a prolific and well-known artist as well, I was of the opinion that we should use it and use as much as we could. the conversations that we had throughout the process was more like where, how much, what's it doing, kind of thing. And the book came out in a series called Contextual, which is an art and writing series. So it was a perfect fit for us to do, and we've done a lot of books like that. So kind of we got to having Frontextos in the interior of the book pretty quickly. But I do believe I had to convince Octavio to use a Frontexto for the cover. I think that took the longest. Would you say?
Yeah. Um, yeah. At first, I didn't want to. I think I told Jay that at one point, I told him it feels like there's going to be too much of me. I don't know what that means, Johnny, but I'm like, the poetry, the art, and then the cover also. But the more I thought about it, and this went on for a few months, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
didn't like I was really thinking hard about it. And the more I thought about it, I realized, let me try it. Let's see if I can get something that will evoke in an abstract way what I'm trying to say that becomes part of the story. A cover that becomes part of the story. That a cover that begins the story that you don't even have to open the book to already um, have a sense, have a anticipate what's going to be in the pages. So I started a series of paintings, abstraction, uh, and I did 17 of them. And when I got to this one, I don't know if this one was like the the I don't know what number it was, maybe the 14th one I did or something. But once I got to that, I kept returning to that one, and and yeah, and it just clicked. I liked it. I think the cover evokes. Uh, um, I don't know if you know, uh, flight, birds, failure. Uh, blood. All those elements that I kind of wanted to evoke. I was my nightmare was, the Book of Wounded Sparrows. You're gonna see a bird in the cover or something. I don't want that. I don't.
Like really literal. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I don't want that. So I knew it had to be abstract, and uh, and then I started using. You read the book. There's some poems where I refer to my father. My father, when he came to the States in 1992, started working labor. Construction, plumbing, sheetrock, just everything. And so I started for the paintings, all of them, the 17 I did, I mixed paint with tile adhesive.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Or somebody asked to see.
Okay. Yeah. So I mixed paint with tile adhesive in a way to kind of remember him and honor his work also. So
Nice.
and the adhesive mixed really well with the paint that I was using. So that's the story of that. But I didn't want to paint the cover. Now I'm so glad that Jay, in his very patient, subtle way, convinced me
Well,
convinced me to do it.
for me as the editor and press director, what a lot of my students are beginning writers don't always know is that most publishing contracts don't give the writer
Yeah,
any kind of say over their cover, what the book ends up looking like. But at TRP, and me being a poet too and a writer too, it's important for us to work with the author as much as we can. But there was this after maybe 2 months, it was getting into month three. I was like, I'm gonna have to drop the hammer on Octavio. I think I want a Frontexto, and but by that time he was already working on,
right.
what it took you 19 paintings to figure out,
17. Yeah,
so it was a long process. I didn't want to pull rank, but it had gotten to the point uh, where I had felt that this book, especially without a Frontexto cover, would have been more noticeable than his fear of, is this too much?
yeah,
I think people would have expected it for this particular book, for sure. there's 25 other paintings in the book as well. So it made sense to me as a publisher, and I just tried to let the artist do his process. So it was fine.
Yeah, it's great. I think it would be weird to have other art by someone else on the cover. I think
Yeah.
you made the right choice. A few people in the audience asked about like practical matters about that. Like, does it cost significantly more printing the book? Like, is there difficulty in the layout if artwork's being included?
It depends on a couple of things, but not as much as you would think. Color printing now is not as hard to get as it once was. It's a little bit more per page, but it's not a significant, um, at least for the printers that we use, a significant thing to overcome. Um, and then printers have gotten so much better at printing art, printing color in books that doesn't look muted or grainy. Um, so that really wasn't a consideration for me. I said, you use what you need to use, make the book what you need it to be. You know, let's use a bunch of these if you want that. So that wasn't a problem for us. No.
Yeah,
Yeah, can I say something, Johnny, about that kind of
please.
follow up? The book has 25, like Jay said, 25 more Frontextos inside, and uh, those 25 from Frontextos were visual poems were printed to make a box, a limited edition box of those Frontextos. So conceptually, I've always seen this book as a book within a book. The visual poems, which all have text, um, make up a book. You know, that there's a story there, a narrative that if you were to take it out, I think you can see the storyline. And if you put it back into the book and read it with the lyric and narrative poems, you know, I think that that story is amplified in many ways. You know, so I don't know. I think the limited edition boxes that TRP printed, I don't know. I think most of them are sold out, right, or something. But they printed uh, a beautiful, um, you know, broadsides of the art, and that's just to say that sometimes you get lucky to work with a press, you know, independent university press that really puts effort into and respects your work and your vision. Not always,
Fantastic.
but yeah.
Yeah. So, some people asked about putting the manuscript together. I looked in the acknowledgments page and I counted 16 different journals and anthologies that had featured some of the poems, but
Yeah,
most of the poems were previously unpublished. Um,
yeah.
so, did you did you write did you write more poems after you had the vision for the book? Like you figured out what the book was, so you wrote more poems for it, or how did you go about that, basically?
Uh, I never when I started, you know, when I first wrote when I first wrote the poem that I knew was gonna be, I guess, the heart of the book. I knew I don't I don't know if I even told myself or if I just felt it, but I knew that I had a project in hand. After that, I didn't go about writing the book. Okay, I didn't go with this sense of I'm going to write a book. I just wrote poems, and I wrote poems, and I wrote poems, and finally, you know, as you said, I kind of, well, I think you mentioned that you know, I'm part of a literary community here in San Antonio, and I try to participate as much as I want. And so, as I wrote poems, I would go to readings and I'll read poems, and before you know it, you know, I would take 10 pages of poems or 15 or whatever, and I realized that they were just accumulating, and they were all with the same. They all had the same emotional, you know, energy, and they all had uh, similar motifs, and they were all being. They had a dialogue. So this is just to say that I didn't go about, I'm going to write this book. The book just found itself. I just found the book within the poems that I had, you know? So that's part of my process. I write. And I think that gives me less anxiety. I don't feel pressure to finish the thing. I'm trying to enjoy myself and enjoy the process of writing. Eventually, I'm going to have enough work that I can create something. I can make something. And I do that with my art also. I just paint, and then slowly I start seeing patterns. I start seeing the connections. I start hearing the dialogue, and that's when I start putting things together. Uh, but one thing I did do was kind of, I guess I really didn't really think about it, or it wasn't intentional, but there was a focus in the poems that I was writing, and that focus was what you find in the book, which is this adult speaker reflecting back on his experience, right? Um, and the different variations of the poems. So uh, I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. I just don't go about. I'm going to write this book, or I have an idea for a book. I just write, and then it is up to me to find it in the writings, to find that book in the writing that I do.
Mm. What's your process, either of you, both of you, for submitting poems? I know some poets avoid it and then they'll spend days or a week or two taking care of all that stuff a few times a year. How do you balance your time and energy on that front? And how do you select where to send different poems?
I'm of the avoiding camp of poets. I haven't been submitting very much the last few years. Working on books, or long-term projects like that, take up what little time I have to give to it, and then submitting, it's a job. It takes all day. You have to like really put some time into it. So when I do submit, I usually set aside a day, usually a Friday. Um, I'll handwrite a list of places that I would like to be in or have never got in before, and um, usually I send my poems to editors that already know my work and give them first shot at it. But usually I'll sit down and spend a morning or an afternoon just submitting, because it takes all morning to do three or four of them.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Maybe since I think the last time that I actually like submitted work anywhere was back in when I was at UNT, 2010, 2009, 2010. Uh, Honestly, I just don't have time. Honestly, I send out work. Those publications that you referred to in the book, they were all solicited, uh, and I think that goes to say how important it is to be part of our writing communities. I know that writing is a solitary act. It's a lonely act to be a writer, but there's also a part of me that wants to connect with other writers. And I just went to the Miami Book Fair, and I met amazing poets that I've never met before, that I've read. And you know, uh, I won't say who it is, but a couple of them said, "Send me some of your poems." And I'm like, "Well, it's going to take 5 years for me to send you poems because I write slow." But my point is, I don't have time to. I don't want to waste that energy. It's energy for me to be submitting, you know. And with poetry, it's not like you're getting paid or anything. I just don't need it right now in my life. So I just rather focus on those projects, the bigger, I guess, quote unquote, the more important project, which is finding time to focus on what I'm doing at that moment for the writing itself. The publishing comes later. I'll worry about it later.
Right. Now, on the editorial side, you said it was pretty smooth sailing, Jay. But how did that go with this book? I imagine there was some arranging and rearranging of the poems and art. What
Yeah,
was your all's
every
inspiration
book's a little
like?
different, and as an editor, I'm not a very I'm not a super hands-on get in the weeds editor. I like to trust my poets, and I'm just lucky that we're getting submissions of books that are already so great. I get to pick from the cream of the crop, as it were. So I'm always looking for books that know what they are when they come in, by poets who know their voice, know their style, and I like to trust a poet's voice and style as much as I can. Um, my editorial stance is to try to find those parts in the book where it trips my eye or trips my ear, anywhere that I think a reader might stumble over a line or a poem. And I do believe, reordered a couple of poems, maybe the final poem in the book. This is something I see pretty often with submissions, is that the last poem of the book isn't the last poem of the book. Um, there may be another poem or two that come after it. And when you're reading a collection, especially in manuscript form, you're following that poet's arc, you're following the arc of the themes and the arc of the book. And there's a lot of times where that second or third to last poem is the last poem of the book. I think, if I recall, we might have shifted the last two around, but um, as far as organization goes, Octavio had the book pretty much ready to go.
Yeah, I did have. He did suggest it for me to take out one or two poems, which I agreed with you. Remember that poem um, about blood in, blood out, the references to that movie?
Oh yeah, great film, but
Yeah. Which I love that poem, but it had a different tone. I
there's a
just
non sequitur in the book, and like as an editor, when an author, and it's the same with my books, like when an author is working on something for 5, 10 years, we become kind of immune uh, or whatever to what's happening in the book. And an editor is the first reader in a way. And I, as an editor, am always thinking about the reader, the customer at the end of the line who gets the book. And I don't want the reader to trip up on a line or a poem, or be cast out of the flow of what the author is doing. And that poem did that. So that's an opportunity for me to go, hey, this one sticks out a little bit. You know, where can we move it, or should we pull it? So that happened a couple of times in this book as well. But it's really just about trying to see what the author's trying to do, try to help that author get there as clean as possible.
What's the timeline like at TRP from acceptance to finalizing and pub date?
Longer than most people think. It it generally takes about a solid 2 years from contract to publication, and that's pretty typical at a lot of houses our size and bigger. Um, for one, we're signing books 1 or 2 years out, um, because uh, that's how the flow of the publication process goes. But we spend, that first year in editorial and preparing marketing. It takes, the second year to produce the book generally, um, and we like to have them edited and done with at least 6 months before pub date, so that anything that goes wrong in the supply chain, and we learned some hard lessons after COVID, when paper shortages started happening and printing times got really long. Um, we like to make sure that the book is done and fully cooked, before. But then you got to start your marketing stuff. You've got to have 4 months lead time for advanced reviews. You've got to prepare the award submissions and award seasons. So all of that stuff does kind of take a lot of time. So right now we're signing books 2 years out. and I'm always working a year or two into the future. So um, I'm looking at my 2027 board right here, my left.
Wow.
Oh, wow. Wow.
I bet you'd like to know who's on it.
That is a slightly longer timeline than I realized. That's interesting.
Yeah, it takes a while, you know. If you want books to come out that are properly edited, that look good, the design takes time, the editorial takes time, the marketing takes time. Um, you know, we don't rush these. We spend a lot of money on them, and we want them to succeed. So, about 2 years
Yeah.
is what we're doing, and what I hear a lot from other editors.
And if you don't mind me asking, how do the contracts work? I know people are often curious about academic press. Do you offer advances? Is there anything unique about that?
With university presses, university presses do offer advances, and we offer advances for a couple of things, mostly our contest winners, because of how university payments work. But the contracts are royalty based, and standard kind of royalty contracts, both for print books, ebooks, and audio books. And we do worldwide rights, and other than that, it's pretty standard, contract.
So Octavio, marketing and stuff on your end, as we said, former poet laureate, very involved. Your visual art has been displayed in galleries, so people in the arts community, not just poetry community, know who you are. I want to hear you talk about, how that plays into launch time, actually trying to tell people to buy a book.
Right.
How was that experience this time?
Well, so far it's been great, and I think it's for kind of like writing the book. For the last 10 years, you're also building community. I mean, without it, I don't think what's happening with my book right now would have happened. Since it came out, I've had events, I had readings, I've been invited to festivals. My spring semester is already getting full with events, and it's one of those things that, one of the things that I try to do when I go to a book fair, for example, or a conference, I always obviously go to party a bit. No, but I always tell myself, if you meet somebody, one person that you connect with, that's enough. And often that's what happens. Um, you have to be part of a community. You have to participate. You have to support your own writing communities for them to come out and support you when the time comes. You know, and the university where I work, are very supportive of what I do. Not just my teaching, my scholarship, but also my creative life. And the book launch was, well, the book was launched there at the university, and community came out. But it's part of that. It's part of the process. You're writing a book, and yes, like I said, it's a solitary thing, but you also have to make time for the people who are also publishing and writing books and supporting them. Um, and I don't know. I feel like sometimes writers forget that. So, and I
Writing a book is a solitary act, but selling a book is not. Selling
exactly,
a book
yeah.
requires a lot of work from a lot of people, and
Mhm.
not least of all, the buyer themselves, the poetry
Yeah,
community, who is
yeah,
the largest market for poetry books. We're a close, kind of small section of the writing world, and we all get to know each other, and
we read
that
each other.
community supports us.
Yeah, and we read each other too. You know, we read our book, each other's books, and so I don't know. I guess in terms of promoting, um, I'm not. In my case, I just don't promote my writing. I try to also promote my artwork, um, and I think that's part of like Jay said, you know, when the time comes to maybe sell some books and people come to your readings and people are interested in your writing, you know, because they see. And I use social media, Instagram, Facebook, and I think that's where I've made some of the best connections when it comes to promoting the book. You know, social media gives me access to connect with other writers, gives me the opportunity to do that and to support them, and they support me, and that's the way it goes. I mean, because you can write a great book, but if you don't have that, and you don't have a press that supports you, that promotes your work, that champions your work, it's going to be hard for any writer um, to, in this case, you know, do the business side of writing, which is selling books. And like,
I
yeah,
talk about this a lot at panels and conferences and interviews that we're not really trained to sell books. We're trained to write them.
right,
And we're not really trained to write books either. We're trained to write one poem at a time. You know, fiction writers are trained to write short stories, but then their agent wants a novel. Um, Putting together a book is hard, no matter what genre you write. But so many people have been trained, I think, or only think about getting accepted because we have to get rejected. You have to work so long and hard to finally get to that point, but people don't realize the years and years of work in 12 different areas that we don't have degrees in that come after that publication. The marketing, the promotion, social media, touring, reading, being a good reader live, going to conferences, getting accepted to all the extra stuff that we do. How do you manage your schedule? How do you even book readings? Like a lot of people are ill prepared for that upon getting the acceptance letter. So, you know, we try to work with our writers as closely as we can to help them get through that part of it because we expect them to work that book for at least the next 3 years. And a lot of times they get that contract and they're like, great, I can write the next one. But the real work starts after the book comes out.
that's right. Yeah,
Yeah. It's interesting that, you know, people joke about poetry not making money, poets and other writers very solitary. But the social media aspect is big. I mean, Instagram poetry can mean
yeah,
like Rupi Kaur, but any poet can do it. Other writers don't have the opportunity to share a whole intact work, you know, on Instagram. Like it's just an excerpt of a story isn't the same as a whole poem fitting
right.
in the square. Um, and then the social aspect, yeah. If you're not at the open mics and things, you're really missing out on
Yeah,
important
well,
connections.
poets not having that kind of like network of agents, we become our own network. We become our own agents. We become our own editors. Most of us edit in some way, shape, or form at some point in our career. Most of us do some kind of extra um, service to the community of poetry somewhere along the way, teaching, reading series, editing, etc. Um, and I think that really, helps us in a way. Uh, I mean, money aside, I mean, we could have plenty of discussions about how much money there is in poetry. I think it's more than people assume. But without each other, you know, we would really kind of be alone. So I think the poetry community as a whole is the most important part of the genre itself.
Yeah. I want to plug one thing because I did a webinar a year or two ago called Minding Your Poetry Business. and we had poets talk about ways to make money outside of teaching gigs,
Right.
outside of publishing. And some of their experiences were like writing the poem for a Gatorade commercial or a Sprite commercial, you know, like a celebrity narrator, and it's like basketball film kind of thing. And she got paid, I think she said like $5,000 to write the poem that was the script for that TV commercial. Yeah, there's definitely good money in poetry if you get creative with it.
There it is.
Let's see here. I was going to ask, did you do anything special to get media attention? Any interviews, or did they come to you?
Yeah, well, being longlisted for the National Book Award, I think that brought me some attention that I didn't expect. And I didn't even know the press had submitted the manuscript to the National Book Award. So even the news was a surprise to me, you know. Um, Other than that,
Well,
I haven't done anything to, solicit press or anything like that at this point. I think so far, whatever press is out there about me has come because of the being longlisted. Um,
well, I was explaining this to somebody just last night. Actually, what people don't realize is that the book had only been out for not even 2 weeks when the long list came out. The timing of it was really great in a couple of ways because we were ramping up all of our regular marketing publicity for the book. Um, we had only just gotten our cases of books here at the office a few days before we found out, and a half hour after getting the email, we're reprinting it again. So, you know, it was really kind of a fortunate timing because the NBA's publicity is
mhm.
incredible. I mean, that same day we were in USA Today, we were in People Magazine, or People.com, and like that's the kind of publicity that poetry books generally don't get.
Exactly.
So it really made our marketing a lot easier for this book just because of the timing and things like that. We were all happily surprised that morning.
I, I bet. How does distribution work for TRP and the Texas A&M Consortium, I think it's called? So
Yeah,
it's
we're a member of the Texas A&M Book Consortium, which is a consortium of I think 9, maybe 10 now Texas-based presses, university presses, and small presses in Texas, and that's distributed by Texas A&M University Press. So they uh, were the second person I called after I tried to call Octavio. Um, hey, this is coming. But they're wonderful to work with. We've been a member of that consortium for 20 something years now, maybe even longer. And they were right on it. The books went out, and um, couldn't have asked for a better partner through a stressful time. Yeah.
yeah, so you're able to scale and probably
Mhm.
take a lot more bookstore orders and library orders than
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, yeah, that's great. Let's see here. Octavio, what you said your spring calendar's getting full. What kinds of events are you doing? Like visiting colleges? You're the visiting poet for a day.
Yeah, well, I'm going to the Tucson Book Fair. Um, I'm going to the what's that called? The Stars and something in New Mexico. I have it here. Hold on. I'm planning to go to AWP. Uh, what else is? There's a couple of other big events that I have. I can't really remember. I need to look at my calendar. But those kind of like for the spring, like if I have 3 or 4 major events like that, especially if I have to travel, I think that kind of that is my spring semester. In addition to smaller events like I'm going to visit some another book festival here in a small town here north of San Antonio. I'm going to the San Antonio Book Festival. Um, what else? I'm planning an event in Houston, a sort of book launch and exhibit. I have a gallery exhibit in January that I'm working on new paintings, but more than likely I'll probably also bring the book and do a reading. So some local events and the ones that are out of town. I think those are the ones kind of like the anchors, right, for the semester and everything else. Um, but I'm just being more intentional and just being more really kind of trying to take care of myself because it does get tiring to be out there, you know. And I love to be around people, but after a while, I just want to be alone. I just want to write, or I just want to paint, or just read.
Feel
So
poets at the end of
yeah,
the
like
day.
a cat, like I'll let you pet me, and then I need my time. But but yeah, those type of events. So local events, Texas events, and then the ones where I have to travel. So I have about 3 or 4 of those where I'm going to be out of town, and yeah,
It's a lot. That's a lot.
yeah, it's a lot.
Audience
Gotta
question.
sell those books, man.
Yes, you do. You do. You have to be artistically, you want artistic integrity, but
Of course, yeah,
you got to sell the books. Yeah.
yeah.
Someone in the audience asks, what's one of the most effective marketing or distribution strategies you recommend with small university presses?
Oh.
Yeah, can we talk a little more about that? Like, Jay, do you create, like one sheet mailers to go out to the review mags and librarians? What kind of effort goes in?
We do all of those kind of traditional things. I think in today's publishing landscape, or at least for us, promotion and marketing isn't necessarily what you think. I think Octavio just answered this question with his last answer. Publishing houses, even the great ones, and there are many, many great ones that I follow and appreciate, but I don't think the publisher sells the books. The author sells the books. They're the ones that connect with the reader. When a reader reads an author that they like for whatever reason, that's a one-on-one connection with them. It's our job to make the book as good as it can be, look as good as it can be, and available everywhere that we can make it available. The travel that Octavio is talking about is what we're looking for in our writers. We want writers who are out on the road doing events and really connecting with people live and in person, one on one, and even like this over Zoom. Access to an author is the best uh, sales motivator for a book, in my opinion. But we do a marketing strategy. We work with the author to come up with which awards we're going to submit the book to. We come up with lists of review outlets and other interested kind of organizations that may be interested in the book. If you're a member of a certain demographic, you want to look for organizations that support that demographic. If you went to a certain college, you want to let them know about the book. If you're a member of any organizations, you want to let them know about the book. We do that sort of thing. And then we also produce postcards, bookmarks, swag, stickers, promotional materials for the author to spread around and for us to mail. So it's kind of a combination of all those classic marketing things. But once again, you can't just write a book, let it come out, and then start writing the next one, because it'll sell 50 copies. And your aunt told you she bought one, but I guarantee you she didn't. I have the list of everybody who bought one. It's not as easy as people think to sell books, and you've really got to grind on it for as long as possible.
So 3 things I did specifically to promote the book when it first came out, before the long listing of the NBA. I don't know if I told you, Jay, but all those postcards you sent me, I sent them out. I mailed them out to specific people with a note, a personalized note. So I've been keeping track of everybody's contact information, who contacts me, addresses, etc. I have a list, and with the postcards, I sent them out. Hey, my book came out. Consider buying it, or blah blah blah. And a lot of them would email me back, hey, I just ordered your book, or I'm going to order your book, or I'm going to teach your book in my classes. Another thing that I did that, it takes so much time, but every night I would, do like 20 of them. Um, Another thing that I did was on social media, and specifically Instagram and Facebook, I would send individual messages to people that I'm connected with, that I've connected in some way, not just randomly, very specific. Like if I met you somewhere or you messaged me before, I send you not a what's it called when you a mass email or messages. No, specific. Hey, it was great to see you 2 years ago at whatever. Check this out. Here's a link to my book. Please consider buying it, or getting a copy. If you have any questions, let me know. Blah blah blah.
But that's just the digital version of what you would do at
Yeah.
a reading. Talking to somebody one-on-one, that's a personal, a personal postcard from a poet. We should all get more of those, like um, that's definitely the kind of thing that makes
Right.
somebody actually check out your book. Because what do we publish? 300,000 books in America every year. I mean, there's a lot of books.
Yeah.
How are we going to get, somebody who can only afford to buy 3, 4, 5 books a year, 10 books a year, to pick your book when they have so many to choose from by so many great writers? It's the author.
Yeah.
It's that author connection.
Well, we're at the hour, so we'll have to put a pin in it here. But this has been great. Octavio, congrats on the book, and it sounds like Texas Review Press does a great job. I know it's tough times for university presses in some places, but it sounds like you're doing great work, doing everything you need to do. With that, I'll just say thank you for being here, and we look forward to everything you have coming out next, both of you.
Oh, thank you, Johnny.
All right.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you for having me.
Good to see you.
To the audience, feel free to just use the contact form on the Authors Guild site if you have any feedback or questions, and that'll get to me very easily. We are not.
You can connect with me on Instagram, please.
Yes, yes.
At writer Octavio Quintanilla. If you want to reach out, or if you have any other questions, I'll be happy to answer them concerning the book.
That's great. All right. Thanks, y'all. We'll see you around.